In this video, we're going to be talking about onward flights, flight reservations, return flights, and how to handle this whole obstacle of when you fly to a country of which you are not a resident. They say, do you have a return flight? And it's a whole thing that you need to be able to address. And the best way to do it, we think, is with onward flights, onward tickets. But we're going to address this whole situation in more detail. Now, we did do another video that I called How to Book Flights, where I went over our recommended method for booking flights from start to finish. And one step in that process was the onward flight, the onward ticket. That was the last step in the process. And I thought, you know what? I think onward flights really deserves its own dedicated video. So let's get into the meat and potatoes. Let's talk about this. So right now in 2024, not every country is asking for this, but I think it's going to be increasingly a thing in the future. And some countries are known to ask for a return flight. Some countries are known for being somewhat chill if you don't have a return flight. For example, in Latin America, Mexico is known to be on the chill side. If you don't have a return flight, they'd certainly prefer to see it, but they're on the chill side. And then I think Colombia is known to be very strict about it. And for Colombia, you really need a return flight in most situations. Obviously, some people are going to have anecdotes saying, oh, I didn't have a return flight. But really, for most situations, when you're booking a flight to Colombia, when you're trying to enter Colombia, they're asking for your departure date. Do you have a return flight? Do you have a bus out of the country? Right? So it doesn't necessarily need to be a flight. And I guess we'll talk about that as well. But long story short, Colombia is strict. Mexico's not so strict, has some quick examples, but a lot of countries are quite strict. I think in Asia, they can be quite strict. I think the European Union can be quite strict. And this strictness not only depends on the country and not only depends on the port of entry, but it also depends on who is it that's trying to come into the country. For example, if you're, British or American or Canadian, a little bit less likely that they're going to ask you for a return flight, or they'll be a little bit more lenient if you don't have it. But if you're, for example, from Latin America, if you're from Mexico or whatever, and you're trying to go to the European Union as a Latino, the EU is for sure going to be asking you for your return flight. Do they ask Americans? It's a good question. I mean, I'm always prepared, so I show it anyway. But, do they ask Canadians? I don't like it. So it really depends a little bit, but I think it's safe to say people with Tier B and Tier C passports are more likely to get asked for the return flight. But that's not to say that people with Tier A passports, first world passports, it's not to say that those people don't get asked, because they do still get asked. And I think more countries are going to be adopting this in the future. And, it's like everything in this world of, travel and migration. Like everything's just trending towards more strictness over time. So bottom line here is that every single traveler should have a return flight when they're entering a country. And now you may be asking, well, what if I don't know the day I want to leave yet? I might stay for a month, I might stay for 2 months. Doesn't matter. You need to have a return flight regardless, okay? So even if you want flexibility, even if you want to, quote unquote, see how things go or see if you like the country, even if you want a flexible, duration of stay in the country, you still need a return flight. You still should have a return flight. If you come to me, My Latin Life, and you say, hey, bro, I want to go to whatever, Costa Rica, I might stay a month, I might stay 3 months if I like it. If not, I'm going to go somewhere else after. I'm going to tell you, you need a return flight regardless. Now, the next question is, well, I don't want to commit to a return flight. You're thinking, well, I don't want to commit to that. That's a huge commitment. I don't want to commit to a specific date to fly out. I don't want to have to commit to a specific location that I have to fly out to, right? So this is where the Onward ticket comes into play. Onwardticket.com is the name of the website that we like. It's like kind of the biggest company in this space, but you could call it a flight reservation. You could call it a fake flight. Whatever it is, you're going to need that return flight. And so there's kind of two main ways to do this, okay? So let's break down the two ways. So the first way is you're going to buy a refundable ticket. Expedia.com is famous for this, where Expedia.com, the tickets are fully refundable within 24 hours. So if you need a return flight, let's just say you're flying from the States to Colombia. You go on Expedia.com the day of your flight to Colombia. You purchase a return flight. Basically, you'll purchase a flight from Colombia to the USA the day of your entry into Colombia, such that when you get to the border, when you get to the border aduanas, the border security agents, you say, hey, here's my flight, blah, 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 the one that you just bought on Expedia that same day. And then as soon as you enter the country, as soon as you pass security, you hop on Expedia and you cancel that flight. Does that make sense? So it's returnable, fully refundable within 24 hours. So you're going to buy it right before security. You're going to pass security. You're going to show it to security. You're going to pass security. And then once you've passed security, once you've stamped into the country, then you can cancel or refund that flight and you get all the money back. Obviously, maybe you're asking like, oh, is it going to like take a couple days to get my money back? I guess. I mean, I never really check. It just kind of goes back to the credit card. Maybe it takes a few days. Doesn't matter. So what's the downside of this Expedia way of doing things? What's the problem with path number one? Honestly, I don't like it because I think it's a lot of brain overhead to basically remember to cancel it. In other words, I'll tell you a story. I was doing the Expedia thing for years. This was like my main way of doing it, was like buying the refundable flights. And then there was one time where, I passed security, I showed them the flight, I passed security, I entered the country, and I'm sure you can guess what happened next. I forgot to refund the ticket. I forgot to cancel the flight. And then I remember I went to sleep in the Airbnb or whatever. And I woke up the next day, I was like, oh, the flight. Oh shit, it's been more than 24 hours. Look at my phone. And right, it's been, 36 hours or something, 48 hours. Forgot to cancel the flight. So I think I called up Expedia and I said like, hey, can I, it wasn't refundable anymore, but I said like, hey, can I switch to the date? And they said, oh, there's a fee. It's, $50, $100, whatever it is to change the flight. I said, yeah, just change it. And I think I changed it to like 6 months in the future or something that I didn't even know if I was going to use, but I was like, whatever, just put something in the future and like maybe I'll salvage some value out of this somehow, right? And so I like semi-salvaged it, but not really. I basically got screwed. So that's the problem. That's the issue with this 24-hour refundable flight thing, is you can get screwed. You can sort of forget to cancel it. And obviously we've taught people in other videos about how you should have data as soon as you land in a country. But for the other inexperienced travelers that don't have data when they land in the country, they won't even be able to cancel it on the spot. So they're going to have to wait till they get to the hotel or the Airbnb or buy a SIM card, and then they can cancel it. And so you're like delaying the process even more, in terms of like when you cancel it. So it's just even more likely that you're going to forget, type of thing, because there's so much new energy. There's so much racing through your mind when you land in a new country. Maybe you're there to meet your buddies. Maybe you're there for a conference, whatever it is. And that's the thing you're thinking about. You're thinking about meeting up with your buddies. You're thinking about checking into the hotel, checking into the Airbnb. Is it too early? Is it too late? All these like million different things that you need to be thinking about. Where do I get the groceries? Like, where should I eat? Right? And so the last thing you want to do is compound that by adding another thing to think about, which is refunding this flight. Okay? So hopefully that makes sense. So obviously it works. The Expedia thing, the 24-hour cancellation thing works, but it's just kind of risky and creates some mental overhead in terms of remembering to cancel it. You're probably listening to this being like, dude, of course I'll cancel it. But I mean, when you fly 50 times a year, eventually you're probably going to forget once. That's kind of what happened to me. Anyway, path number two. Path number two is the one that I really like and that I use more now, which I use a site called onwardticket.com. And what they basically do is for $16, I'm sure the price will go up eventually, but right now for $16, they provide you a verified flight reservation that can be verified in the system of the airlines, verified in everyone's system. You purchase this flight reservation online for $16. It's not the real flight, but it's the real reservation. Honestly, I need to investigate how this works or how this is legal, but it's been around for a long time and it works. And I should know how it works by now, but I don't. But it works. So I like onwardticket.com. There's all these different websites. If you just Google Onward Flight, that's probably the best thing to Google. Google Onward Ticket, Google Onward Flight. And there's all these websites where you can get a verified flight reservation that anyone can check in their system, and they can see your name, they'll see your passport number probably, they'll see that you really truly have a return flight. I guess you don't actually get the flight, but you get the reservation for it. And the airline industry is okay with this sub-industry existing, with this solution existing. Will this exist 5 years from now? I mean, I'm not sure. I guess I have to investigate more how this even works. But what I like about it is that you just pay the $16, you have the reservation, you can show it on your phone, you get an email with a flight number and a reservation code and all that good stuff, and you can show it to the border security, no problem. And then there's nothing to cancel. You don't have to think about it again. And so you're basically, paying $16 to not have to think about the cancellation, not have to log in again and manually do some cancel and this and that. So you basically just need to decide, like, is paying $16 worth reducing the stress, worth reducing the risk, reducing the mental overhead of the cancellation, the risk that maybe it can't be canceled or this and that thing, right? So we really like it. We really like onwardticket.com. You get a verified flight reservation, and it's totally legit. And so that's what we use. So just to recap, we gave you two solutions to the issue of the return ticket problem. And the two solutions to the issue of the return ticket problem are: one, buy a refundable flight on Expedia, or two, buy a verified flight reservation, an Onward ticket, on a site like onwardticket.com. Okay? So those are the two solutions to the Onward flight issue, the return flight issue, and you need to choose one. You need to definitely have a return ticket wherever you go, even if the country is supposedly chill, like, say, Mexico. Even if the country's chill, still just book the return flight just to avoid any hassles. The last thing you want to do is get held up and potentially miss your flight and have to buy one of these Onward tickets on the spot or something. I guess you kind of could do that. Like, you could, if you really want to save $16 or something, is you could just rock up with no return flight, and if the flight attendant or the border security say, "Oh, where's your return flight?" Then you go, "Oh, just give me a second, I'll buy one on the spot." But I don't think it's really worth it. You're really better off just coming in ready, because it's not just one person that's going to ask. It's not like that you just need to, get by this one time. You're going to get asked at least twice. I probably should have mentioned that at the beginning, because you're probably going to get asked at the flight check-in counter when you go to, check your bags and get your physical flight ticket, right? You go to the check-in counter, and when you go to the check-in counter, they'll ask for your return ticket. Cool, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they don't. Maybe you get your physical tickets. You go through airport security, blah, blah, blah. You board the flight. They might ask you again when you go to board the flight, when they say like, "Oh, group 3, group 4, group 5. They might ask there. That's a little bit more rare though. And then you're going to board the flight. You're going to fly to the country. You're going to fly to Colombia. And then when you land in Colombia, you have to check in with Migraciones Colombia Migration Border Agents. And then when you check in, you hand them your passport, and they say like, "What are you here for?" And you're like, "Turismo." And they go, "Cool, do you have a return flight?" And then boom, so that's basically the second big time you're getting asked. So you're going to get asked on both sides, probably when you board the flight and then also when you land. So if you're trying to be cheap to save $16 or something, well, just know that you have to overcome the obstacle twice. So you really should have a solution for this, because you get asked more than once. So 1, buy a refundable flight, or 2, get the Onward ticket. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you guys learned something in this video, and you will be flying as a more prepared traveler from now on.